Welcome back for episode 2 of my Windsurfing Round Greece series.
In the first episode we started off from the small village of Plataria with a southeasterly wind. With my journey leading me south around the Greek peninsula, I had to go upwind against the wind on day 1. After making a quick stop on Corfu and having lunch in Zivota, I made it to a small beach just south of Zivota. Today we are going to head further south and we're actually facing some challenging conditions along the way. So let's get right into the video.
Now comes probably the most scary part of the next couple 100 kilometers. For me, the only reason to continue would be for the video now.
I didn't think it would end like this, but I'm not making any way upwind. I'm so f***ing sick in this wave.
Alright, back for the second day and the second leg of the Windsurfing Round Greece challenge. We're at the same beach again, of course. And starting from here, today I want to make it like maybe 30-40 kilometers down south, the coastline. But I have to go upwind, so I have to make a lot of legs, and probably for 30 kilometers I need to do like 90 kilometers of actual distance. And we have a little bit more wind today, and it's a lot warmer today. It's like 28 degrees. Here in the bay it's not so much wind, because I think we're in the shadow of this mountain over there. But outside it should be stronger than yesterday, so I'm hoping that I make a lot more distance just by going faster today. And I'm bringing up the same stuff, the 7.9 and again the Mistral board. It's so warm in this wetsuit, but I'm wearing it for safety. But anyway, it's time to go now. There's absolutely no wind in sight here. But we're going to make it around the Cape and hopefully to Paga and Amuria today, so that in the next leg we make it down to Corfu, to Lefkada. So yeah, I guess we head off now. It's 2 o'clock, so it's already quite late, but the wind is supposed to increase all throughout the afternoon. So let's go.
So here I was going for the second leg. Again, the wind was coming from the south, so I had to fight upwind against the wind once more. With the old raceboard I'm using, you can actually make good way upwind if the wind is strong enough that you can plane, as it still has a dagger board.
Alright, we're in the wind now. Slowly picking up speed.
This increases the upwind potential drastically. However, I was figuring out as I was going that going upwind really isn't ideal for a long distance trip. If you're on a square reach along the coastline, you can make around 15 to 20 kilometers in the direction you're going each hour. However, if you have to go against the wind, like in my case, you're making about 15 kilometers an hour, but as you have to crisscross against the wind, you're actually only making around 5 kilometers of actual distance against the wind. So as you can imagine, in these conditions it's a tough fight against the conditions to make good distance. On this particular day, the wind and waves were also increasing throughout the whole session. And one thing I was struggling with were the tacks.
I crashed the last tech because the waves are so big, and then I got nervous because I'm out at sea and the waves are going on the mast. So it took me like maybe 5 minutes to get the board in the right position and start the sail, get the sail up. I need to go to shore and evaluate if it's worth going on, because the wind is supposed to pick up as well as the wave.
The raceboard only really becomes stable as you have sail pressure. When you take this away during the tag, the narrow raceboard becomes super unstable, especially if you have some bigger waves like I had. As a result of this, I was actually crashing almost every jibe. Another thing that was on my mind now was where I was positioned on the coastline. Until now, there were sand and stone beaches everywhere along the coastline, making for easy landing opportunities if something goes wrong or if I just simply get tired. But now I knew that after 1 hour of sailing there wouldn't be any more opportunities to land for 20 kilometers of coastline, as there were just cliffs with no beaches anymore. 20 kilometers of distance against the wind, however, would mean that I'd probably have to sail for another 60 kilometers or roughly 4 hours to make it to the next landing site, Paga. The last opportunity to land before that would be Cabo Stasi Beach. So I decided to make a quick pit stop there and evaluate the risks of continuing on.
Ooh, that's a lot more exhausting than I thought it would be. Out in here it's not so many waves, but outside is already big waves, and then the tacks are so difficult. I actually fell in one and I took like 5 minutes to get the sail out again. And now I figured out a way how to do the tacks by just throwing the sail onto the other side and letting the board turn and then picking back up the sail, because it's so wobbly out there. But yeah, I need a break.
So after a quick break and re-evaluating the situation, I decided that it was not worth to continue on that day. I only had 4 hours of daylight left, and with 60 kilometers to sail, it would roughly take also 4 hours, so there was no margin for error if something were to happen, and with no landing site anywhere near the coastline, it was just too risky. So I decided to call it a day and continue on another one.
Back for day number 3 of the long distance challenge. And today we have a light wind day ahead of us, but as last time I didn't want to go on because the waves were becoming too big. I think today is perfect because the wind for now is from the south where we want to go. So we're waiting a bit until it will swing around to west and later northwest, and then we can just go downwind. We probably will not make too much speed today, but that's okay because as we're going downwind we actually don't have to make so many kilometers to head down south.
So yeah, as it turned out, this day I wouldn't make any distance down south because the wind came from the complete opposite direction of what was forecasted. The forecast was for northwest, with which I could have just gone downwind very slowly, but I would have made some distance, but it was 5 knots from the southeast. So I would have to go against the wind again, and with 5 knots it's just not possible to do a lot of distance. I tried for around an hour and made like maybe 300 meters upwind, and the wind just wouldn't turn around. So at this point I think a little bit of frustration was kicking in, because you know, you make these plans and you have these episodes in your head. So the first one I wanted to be in Laka already on the island, and on the second day I wanted to go over to Paga, and now it played out completely different from what I was planning. But then also I was telling myself, okay, you cannot plan these things because you're dependent on nature, of course. You just have to deal with it and do the best you can. And also you have to see that this is completely new to me and I don't know what to expect, and I don't know what can happen, because it also can get pretty dangerous. And as it turned out, I would get into a dangerous situation in this next leg. So let's get into this one now. Guys, it's way too early. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, but I have big plans today because I finally want to get around this cape and get at least to Paga, better to Amudia and down south. So we have an early start, and we've tried twice already to get around this cape. And the one time the wind was too strong and the waves too big, and the other time the wind was just too light and I would have to go upwind. And so today we have a completely different plan, but first I need some coffee. Cheers. Guys, I don't work without coffee in the morning. Alright, let's head back over to Cabo Stasi or something like that. I really need to work on my Greek for this challenge. But it's the beach where we left off the last time, and now it's 6:30 in the morning, so we're pretty good with time. The sun rises at 8. So we're gonna drive over there for like 45 minutes. See you there.
Okay, we got to the beach. There's a ferry out there. And I can actually see the lights of Laka and Paxos. Having a banana as I didn't have breakfast. Alright, here at the beach at 7:30 in the morning. Let me tell you about the game plan. Because today we have a long episode. We tried twice to get around this cape over there. And we didn't manage. One time because it was too windy. And one time because there wasn't enough wind. But today we're starting early because now we have wind in the morning to go to that island over there, Paxos, that we wanted to do on the first day but didn't manage, because now in the morning the wind is more offshore, so the angle is perfect. And then the game plan is when the wind turns later to more onshore that I can go down south. So it's 7:30 now, I already rigged up, let's head out. But as we can see, there's also some swell today, so it will not be super easy to get out.
So, here I was starting again from Kavostasi Beach. I wanted to use the changing wind direction to my advantage, so the early start allowed me to go over to Paxos in the morning. As I was sailing out, I noticed that the swell direction didn't match the wind direction. The swell was coming from the west, however, the wind waves were starting to build up from the southeast. The result of this was a very messy sea state, with waves coming from all directions. The wind, however, was strong enough that I was going again in the semi-planing raceboat mode with around 7 to 12 knots. The island of Paxos is around 20 kilometers offshore, so a lot further away than the island of Corfu, where we went in the first episode. However, I was surprised at how quickly I was getting there. After only 40 minutes, I was 2/3 of the way there, and everything was looking to be on track for a good day. However, this is where things all of a sudden took a turn for the worse.
So guys, the wind kind of fell asleep and turned 30 degrees, which is the bigger problem, because I was saying before I should go upwind, but I didn't go upwind enough, I think, because now I'm fighting for every degree so that we make it inside there to Laka. I really have to go upwind now in the lightest wind. So yeah, I'm a bit mad at myself because I could have just gone like a mile more upwind and I wouldn't have any problem now.
So after this clip the updates kind of stop because the wind actually turned to 0 or like 4 knots, and the wind was completely offshore from Laka where I wanted to go. So I was kind of making the first 2/3 of the way in 40 minutes, and then I was out there struggling for like 2 hours to get upwind the last maybe 2 miles against the wind to get inside to Laka on the island of Paxos. But because the wind was so light, and I was telling you about the sea state, that it was so rough and messy, I wasn't doing any way upwind. I mean, just look at this track. So actually, let's get into my safety precautions now, because I ended up needing them for this, because I was just going nowhere. And actually, I was telling you before that my parents are following me with the boat for these episodes, especially the ones where I'm heading far offshore. So actually the night before they were sailing to the island of Paxos into Laka, so they were with a boat inside of Laka, and I had my phone with me, so after like trying for 2 hours out there to make it upwind the last 2 miles, I finally gave up.
I didn't think it would end like this, but I'm not making any way upwind. I'm so f***ing sick in this wave. I had to call my parents who are over there for rescue, because I tried for 1.5 hours to get there, but I'm not making any way. The wind has died, the waves are too big, I cannot make it upwind. And I'm cramping everywhere.
I was kind of thinking about it for 45 minutes before I called them, but at some point I was just noticing that my energy was also kind of disappearing, and I really needed to get a rescue. And it was not easy in this sea state. And what we ended up doing was, I was 2 miles out of Laka, my parents were coming out with the boat, which was also not easy, because with the sailing boat, if you have the sails up, they also get more stable, but they were coming out with just the engine because they wanted to pick me up. And the boat was moving around a lot, so we were thinking, how can we get the gear inside the boat if they rescue me? and we figured it's just not possible in this sea state, especially with a sail, to get it onto the boat. And yeah, so the only choice we had was to take a long rope and tie the end of the rope to the board, kind of move the sail in a position where it would hopefully stay stable in the water throughout the waves while pulling the windsurf gear inside to Laka the last 2 miles. And that's what we ended up doing. It took actually like a half an hour to go 1.5 miles. And yeah, I have to say, I mean, I went 2 years to sea, but I'm also not free from seasickness, and being in this sea state for 2 hours and not moving at all while balancing the board, I also got really sick. And that was, I think, the worst part, which was costing me so much energy, was the seasickness, which I never had before in windsurfing. Because when you're planing, I don't get it, but just being stuck on the waves and not moving at all, then the seasickness came. So I was super happy that my parents were able to rescue me, because otherwise I think the only option I had left was to go back to shore, which at that point was like maybe 10 miles away. So yeah, that's kind of the story of how I had to get rescued on the second leg, which is really not what I wanted. And yeah, this experience is really interesting because I really didn't think that I would need a rescue, especially in this kind of light wind. I thought the only possible reason why I would need a rescue is if I have a mast breakage, which can always happen in windsurfing, and then you're basically dependent on getting rescued. So to have it like this, with really, it's interesting because the sea can change so quickly, because it was so nice the first 40 minutes and I thought like, oh yeah, 1.5 hours I'm there, and then all of a sudden the wind disappears and turns around and you can do nothing. Nothing. I was not making any meters upwind in this sea state. It's really, yeah, an interesting experience. But yeah, anyway, that's how we made it into Laka. Not completely on windsurf, the last 2 miles I had to make with the boat. So the next time we have to start, of course, from Stasi again, as the track has to be one line. And I wasn't sailing out from Laka this day like I planned. So I guess I'll see you again for episode 3, back in Stasi Beach again. Thanks to all my Patreons. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to not miss any videos of this series. And let me know down in the comments below how you enjoy this kind of format and if you like it. See you in the next one, guys.